You were playing rugby internationally. You know, you found it easy to get girls, and it's what most guys are aiming for. You know, why would you leave that behind?
I don't know why it's portrayed to be the thing, because in reality it's not the thing to be doing, because it's not happiness. It's far from happiness, because you're just lying your way out of every situation, and you're always having to change someone new, you know what I mean? Because no one wants you after you do the dirty on them. So it's not what it's jacked up to be. And you know, playing rugby as well, you know, it was like I was trying to find what is my purpose in life. You know, as a kid, you're growing up and you're like, oh, I want to be a fireman or a policeman or whatever. So I had to try and find what is it for me that is something that I'm going to be able to pursue in life and find happiness in. And, you know, I found it through sports, and I thought it was in rugby. So that's what I went for, and that just comes with that lifestyle. But it's not until, you know, I came to Christ, you know, and I found out who God was. And, you know, even when I first started delving into it a little bit, you know, dipping my toes and seeing who Jesus was, you know, same experience like you, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to be giving up, you know, sleeping around with women and, you know, chasing after these pursuits. And it was like, it didn't look attractive, you know.
And
so
just to sit in church and listen to
exactly. I'm like, that's boring, man. Like, I want the other lifestyle, even though I had been experiencing the other lifestyle already, and it wasn't that great. So yeah, I sort of was dipping in and out, looking into it. But it's not until I saw who Jesus really was and the sort of guy that he was. And I'm like, man, I've been trying to find my identity and replicate famous people who actually had terrible characteristics. You know, really, like the traits of the people I looked up to were just terrible. And I'm like, that's what I was aiming to be. And then when you see Jesus in the contrast of those people, it's like, man, he's a completely different person. And it's like, that's what a real man is, you know. Right. And as a young guy growing up, you're trying to find your manhood, your identity, as we've spoken about before. And it's like, you see Jesus, who he really is. And then I had to examine myself, you know. And it's like, man, when I put myself next to Christ, man, I'm a bad guy, you know. And it's like, if you ask anyone in the world today, they're like, I think I'm pretty good, you know. Everyone's like, I'm not a bad person. I didn't murder or you know, steal or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, man, I couldn't even say that I was a good guy when I looked at Christ, because the way that I was treating people, the way that I was lying, the way that I was self-absorbed, it's like, man, those are terrible characteristics. And you have to be real with yourself, you know. Deep, bro. You have to be real with yourself. And all those experiences in the past, because many, you know, women's hearts that I would have broken and, you know, I treated like absolute garbage. And it's like, I can't even go back to them and apologize, you know, because they're so far in the past. But you don't even know what sort of impact you had on their life, and what that could have caused for them with relationships in the future and stuff like that. And it's like, I carry this guilt, you know, you carry this guilt around, and you're like, what can I do? Because I can't go back and get forgiveness. And it's like, man, you carry it around with you and you feel bad for it, you know. And then coming to Christ, I realized, you know, even though I'm such a bad guy, like I can come to Christ and he can forgive me for those things that other people won't. And it's like, even if people looked at me still as like a downright bad guy, you know, it's like I can be a new person in Christ. Totally. And I can be forgiven. And I was able to let go of that guilt, you know, and
bro, that's deep.
And just change my life. And it's like, even then I realized, you know, I was doing things against people, but I was also doing things against God, you know, when I was doing that stuff as well. And I was like, man, I'm just so sorry, you know. It was like a wave that just hits you.
Bro,
you know?
This is deep.
And it just completely changed my mindset and the way that I looked at people, and the way that my life was. And now, yeah, I'm not playing rugby. You know, I'm not sleeping around with heaps of women.
So aren't you just bored, bro?
And that's what I'm going to say. Everyone's going to be like, so man, boring. That's so boring, man. It's like, what are you doing? You're a loser. Why would you give that up? And it's like, my life now, I just have peace, you know. Like, I have peace. I'm not getting caught in dramatic situations or lying to everyone, having people turn against me and become enemies, because that's what it was like. And it's like, man, this is a life that I hadn't experienced before, and it's nothing like the old one. So like, giving that up, it's totally worth it, you know.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so much more happy in the life that I am now, and I look at people completely different.
We weren't following Jesus. We were not even in any way, shape or form walking a righteous path with God, and we didn't know anything about God and stuff. Like, I always believed in God, but yeah, it certainly made us start looking. Hi, so we're Lynn and Ian. and we're just going to share a little miracle, actually a really big miracle that happened to us a few years ago. So we were living in the North Island. We'd sold our house and we had to come down to find a new house down on South Island. So we were driving our motorhome. It was a 3.5 ton motorhome, 7.5 metres long, and Ian was driving. We were just coming into Timaru, and we were 16 kilometres from Timaru, and I had seen a sign that said 16 kilometres, and like Ian was getting really tired, and that's when I saw that sign. I thought, well, because we're going to stop in Timaru, and I'm thinking, well, surely I can drive 16 kilometres, like that's not much, even though I knew I was tired. So I thought, well, I'll take over. So I did. I took over driving. I said to him, hey, I'm really tired, I'll take over.
So then I'm in the passenger seat, of course, and I pretty much fell asleep immediately. And I guess a very short space of time had elapsed, and then the next thing you know, I feel these hands around my throat, and I'm choked back to fully awakeness and fully alert, just like possum in the headlights. And I say to Lynn, what are you doing? And she replied,
well, I'm asleep, obviously, now, and I heard this, Lynn, what are you doing? And I just went, I'm sleeping. And then I look in front of me, and I literally am on the wrong side of the road in a perfect straight line, on the wrong side of the road so perfectly, and there's this massive line of cars heading straight towards us, and somehow I just sort of, it was so fast, so fast.
yeah, quickly.
I just swerved, and we just landed back on our side of the road, and there was all these cars behind us as well.
Yeah, it's just like the vehicle floated across to the other side of the road, and it's a sheer miracle we didn't hit the oncoming traffic, or the traffic that was behind us. So
imagine what they must have been thinking.
I hate to think what they were thinking.
So, it was crazy. It was a crazy, crazy miracle, and saved our life in more ways than one, because, well, who woke up Ian for a start?
I mean, there's no way that anybody could explain the sensation that I had of those hands and being woken up that way. It's I can still feel it now as if it happened, before.
We didn't understand how we could live through that experience. And then we weren't following Jesus. We were not even in any way, shape or form walking a righteous path with God. And we didn't know anything about God and stuff. I always believed in God. But, yeah, it certainly made us start looking. And, it was a real reality check and a point of, it was just such a real experience and an absolute miracle.
For that, we're truly grateful, and it's really the turning point, wasn't it? Yeah. For us.
So we got our Bibles out, and God found us.
Yeah.
Jesus found us.
And we're still reading the Bible.
I really want to know, why would you choose Christianity over Islam? Because obviously you had both options, you learned both options. What made you choose Christianity instead of Islam?
Yes, so I grew up in a split Muslim and Christian household, and my dad's Muslim, mom's Christian. I've read the Quran, read the Bible, and you may not have known this, but the person referenced the most in the Quran is not Muhammad. It's actually Moses.
Interesting.
Yes, and so Moses is referenced, Noah, Abraham, and all these other prophets. But I realized from reading the Quran and reading the Bible that a lot of the time you need the Bible in order to understand the Quran, because these people are referenced, but you read the Bible and you see the full story, and of their life and the genealogies and where they went and everything like that.
The original story, even.
Yes, the original story from the Jews, in fact, about these people who are part of the Jewish nation, And so I found that the Quran is a dependent revelation, not a complete revelation. It's dependent on what? It's dependent on the Bible. As a matter of fact, if the Bible had not existed, a lot of the Quran would not be in existence either, And so a lot of the time it's been said that the Quran is a complete revelation, but I found it to be a dependent revelation.
Interesting.
Dependent on the Bible. I found the Bible to be the complete revelation. And so that's one of the big differences, and that's one of the things that got me understanding more in line with the Bible instead of the Quran.
And I suppose the Bible is the original authority, and so without the Bible, there'd really be no original manuscript for these stories, because that's the only source of information for the characters.
Yes.
Interesting. So then how did you go from, obviously now, okay, I choose Christianity, to taking it to the next step, becoming baptized?
The existence of God was not something I was wrestling with. I believe that everyone deep down really knows that God exists, you know. And just as the butterfly knows where to migrate as soon as it's born, or an alligator knows how to be an alligator and get in the water without being taught,
Yeah.
you know, the real issue was how to be a good person, you know, and what happens to me when I die and I'm in this state of sinfulness, you know. And so the Quran states that if your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, you'll enter eternal life. If your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, and God will measure your heart, and so on and so forth. But the Bible says explicitly, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it's not for the good that you've done that you're being condemned, it's for the evil that you've done that you're being condemned. So if you're driving on the street and you have a speeding ticket, and you go to the judge and say, 98% of the time I'm a good citizen, you know, the judge will say, I'm not condemning you for the good you've done. More to it. Be good. more so than not. But you've sinned. You've committed an offense. You have to pay for it. No matter how many times you try and bribe the judge with, but I've been a good person and I swept the yard, and, you know, I even swept the yard too, you know. No. God is an impartial judge, and you've sinned, and your sin is enough to put you in prison, basically, you know, or to have a fine, you know. And so that made sense to me. Yes. And I don't believe that the human space, therefore, limits God, that he can't enter our space to work on behalf of humanity. I don't believe man is that strong to repulse a infinitely loving God, that he somehow is beyond him to take on a human nature. It's not beyond him. If God can do all things, then he can do all things. And that's one of the things that he's able to do, and that's one of the things he did do, and it resonated with me, you know.
I suppose there's something good even about the people's realization that it seems impossible for God to do that, but it demonstrates the magnitude of the love, that as impossible as it seems that the King Charles would come and now be a servant washing my feet, God is not like King Charles. And maybe the image we have of God is not really who God is.
That sort of love is not beneath him. It's beneath me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people can find it so difficult. But when you get to know God, and he's infinitely loving, it's certainly not beneath him.
He did the unimaginable.
He did the unimaginable for humanity.
Incredible. That's very insightful, man. I appreciate that very much. Super good. Awesome.
I just wanted to share a short testimony, which just explains for me how God is real in my life. 3 days ago, we're renovating a house at the moment, and we've just had to spend quite a bit of money on materials, but we still need to spend more. And so my husband went and decided that we were going to spend everything on building materials. So he, without telling me, so he went off to Bunnings and came back and said he spent everything that we had. And we didn't have any more money coming in for the next 2 weeks. So it was like, okay, we just have to put this into your hands, God, and trust you. And literally 1 hour later, I opened my email account, and there was a message from the tax department saying that from last year my tax return has is arriving in the next couple of days, might be there today. And it was exactly the same amount that Peter had just spent on the doors and the door frames. So with these little things of God providing a solution before the problem even occurs, I know in a very tangible way that God is real. So just encouragement for you out there who are also, if you're not a believer, then
just give it a go, because God looks after his faithful believers, and he has 1,000 ways to provide for us in which we know nothing. So whatever trials that we might have to go through, and there will be trials, he's already planning ahead in how he can provide a way of escape. So I'll just finish with a verse from Psalms. This is in chapter 9, verse 10. It says, "They that know thy name will put their trust in thee, for the Lord has not forsaken them that seek him." So God bless you all, and I pray that it's been an encouragement for you. I certainly know that God is real. Thank you.
Anymore. And I was in limbo for a while, actually, thinking, man, where am I going to go with my life? And so because I was searching for a direction, for a path, it was coincidental, well, maybe providential, that I encountered, someone who was a Christian who came to the house we were staying and started Bible studies. And it was like a revelation for me to think, wow, how come no one ever mentioned that the Bible has prophecies predicting the future? No one ever mentioned that, a third of the Bible is prophecies that have been fulfilled, and empires. And so it made God personal for the first time, because when I was smoking weed, I deliberately rejected Christ. I was like, I don't believe in the Jesus thing, because, animals seem to have sex and no one's stopping them from having sex, because that was my thing,
Yeah.
But then, when I realized how personal God was, and that actually there's so much common sense to the Bible, I deliberately chose, look, I'm going to take on this path. And when I got my first prayer answered in a miraculous way, it made me realize that it's not just a book. There's actually a person behind the book who is God, who is Christ. And then it was just one step from there.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, when you ask them about Christianity or believing in God, it's like he's just some fairy tale, or it's a book full of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, I like the point that you said he became personal
Totally.
to you. So he wasn't some far distant being, he really was someone that was wanting to be involved in your life
Totally.
and close to you. And I think that changes your whole experience, right?
Absolutely.
The encounter is completely different.
Totally. Like, especially because the thing that I was, at a point in my life where, I was deciding about, okay, which direction to go. Am I going to marry the person I'm with? Or what am I going to do? And I deliberately said, Lord, I had just learned that about God knowing the future, and that God was personal. So I said, look, you know the future. And, I'm in this situation in my life, and I really want to know which direction I should take, whether I should marry who I'm with, or what I should do. So please send me someone tomorrow. Very specific. I'm in the garage. There's no one there. Please send me someone tomorrow. And to have that miraculous scenario play out where someone parks next to me at the BP the next day, insists I jump in their car, we're not even close, and starts talking to me about my wife now, back then she wasn't my wife, is like, bro, what? Like, okay, it could be coincidence, but it was too perfect to be a coincidence. And then it made me realize that God is even more personal than I realized, that he's interested in every little detail of my life. And it's like, you can choose to ignore it, but I thought, I'm going to follow this path and see where it leads. And it was kind of exploring, but it was definitely a meaningful journey, and I've never turned back since.